on the stream, just might want to check that volume too while you're at it. Whoops. Okay. That's too far down. Okay. The board's acting up. Hello. All right. Now maybe down just a 10, 20%. Oh, what'd she say?
It's not letting her change it. She's moving it, but it's not changing.
Oh, really? Ooh, that's scary. Okay. All right. Well, let's pray together and we'll get started. Lord, we just commit this time to you. We pray that we'd be teachable, that we would learn your ways, we'd learn your design, we'd learn how about ourselves, but also about people that we are part of our community, that we work together with. Or perhaps some of this can help in work and career. And so, Lord, we pray that you would just bring a spirit of wisdom into this meeting tonight. We pray it in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, so you came to the person. Just for fun, I'd like to run the mic around a little bit. If y'all could just comment, how many of you, first of all, have been to this before? I see your hands. Okay. It's usually about a third each year. So anyway, regardless of whether you've been before, what attracted you to come tonight? Any comments? What was your motivator?
Because I could.
Because you're what?
Because I could.
Because she could. All right. Anybody else? All right. Jenny?
My major is psychology, so this has always been of interest to me.
Oh, okay. Anybody else? Comments?
I had to confirm for the 5th time that I'm an ESFJ.
So you had to come, this is your 5th time?
Yes.
Seriously? So are you going to teach it next year?
If you would allow me to.
Okay. All right. Anybody else? Comments while you're here? Mike?
I think this is the 3rd time that I've been, but I always forget what happened the last time.
Okay. All right. So you want a refresher?
Something was happening at the net.
It's just something going on at the net. You're going to be here. Okay. Me too. That's why I'm here. Naomi, why are you here?
Oh, no, I was going to ask what the question was.
Power?
Oh, the question is, what drew you to come tonight?
Well, the first time I went was 2 years ago, and fun fact, both Dara and Mrs. Yonker, I was like brand new at the net, but y'all approached me because I was sitting in the back, and y'all were really sweet. Just fun fact. I was thinking about that today.
Fun fact. Okay. All right. All right. Well, let's go ahead and get started. I want to relate a few things. When you take tests, and we're relying mainly on 4 tests, and the cornerstone of this teaching is going to center around the Myers-Briggs, but we're going to introduce you to some of the other tests first. I believe that it's helpful as a tool because when you're working as a team with other people, whether it's in a professional environment or a ministry environment, it helps people to get along a little bit better if they understand each other, kind of how they're wired, how they think perhaps differently than you do. It also fosters a sense of acceptance. We appreciate each other's differences instead of always rubbing each other wrong. If you have customers, it can help you understand who they are, how they're wired. I found it very helpful at times. I've done this presentation in a professional environment to medical professionals, whether it's so understanding strengths and weaknesses is all part of this. And also, we are going to apply this to marriage and parenting as we get later in the series, next week especially. But you'll begin to see application when it comes to relationships, but especially marriage and parenting. I felt like that Jeanette and I would have benefited from some of the tests, especially the Myers-Briggs. I think we would have benefited greatly early in our marriage, but nobody was doing this. We were married in 1977. I mean, nobody was doing it. Nobody had cell phones either. Nobody had an internet. It just wasn't available for whatever reason. I'm sure somebody had tests, but at the time it was not something that was kind of fundamental or available. And so, but later in our years, I took a graduate level class where they introduced some of the concepts of the Myers-Briggs and why it matters. And so in that graduate study, it really opened my eyes to a few things. So it was at that time that Jeanette and I began to explore our differences, and it really began to help us understand each other, because I'm married to a lady who is my exact opposite. And that's actually the way it goes down oftentimes. You know, couples are dating and they think, oh, we have everything in common and we like all the same things. Then you get married and find out, oh, lo and behold, you take a couple of tests and find out, oh, maybe the reason there's a little tension in our marriage at times is simply because we are wired entirely different. I mean, beyond just male and female. That's enough right there. But just the way you're wired. So opposites really do attract. I have a video clip just to give you a little entertainment to kick off. Logan, since you've been to the class 5 times, could you grab me some water real quick?
Okay, first thing I'm going to teach you is a very basic cha-cha.
Oh, I know.
Well,
Boom shakalaka, 3, 4, cha cha cha. Boom shakalaka laka, boom shakalaka laka, boom 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 shakalaka laka, boom boom shakalaka.
Are you done?
Boom 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 shakalaka. Okay, now I'm done.
Dharma, do you want to learn this or not?
Sorry.
Okay, now I'll lead.
When do I leave?
You never lead.
Who made up that rule?
I don't know, Sir Edgar Ballroom. Now look, I know we're doing this for fun, but I don't want to look like a complete idiot out there.
All right, I'll be serious.
Thank you. 1, 2, cha-cha-cha.
Serious.
Dharma.
That's my name. Cha cha cha. Don't wear it out. Cha cha cha.
okay, so if you've ever watched it, it's an old show, but if you've ever watched it, you realize that the entire stream of humor in the show is centered around the fact that they're opposites. And if you look at their Myers-Briggs, it's obvious what they are, because they take the extreme opposites and throw them together in a marriage. And so they would be an ENFP and an ISTJ, and that was their opposite. Literally every letter is opposite. We'll get into that more and explain it. So opposites actually do often attract. So we're looking at 5 tests in this 2-part series. The Myers-Briggs, primary focus, love languages, motivational gifts, the animal test, which you all got a preliminary handout to help you kind of get ready with that. Maybe you get one to Ryan. And finally, the Enneagram has become a very popular test, but we're really not going to spend time on that. But if you are interested in the Enneagram and you really love it and you just want to know what I am, I'll just tell you I'm an 8 wing 7. Right, Amanda? I'm an 8 wing 7. And so for whatever that's worth, whatever it means, I don't even know what it means. I just know what I am. It helps people feel at peace. If they love the Enneagram and I can tell them what I am, they're like, oh, okay. All right, so let's look at the biblical basis, because a lot of times people will come to a seminar like this and they think, gee, you know, is it really founded on the Bible? Is there a basis for this? Is it just psychobabble? You know, what's going on here? But there actually is a very cool biblical principle that lays this out, the concepts. So you see in 1 Corinthians chapter 12, verses 4 through 6, it says, there are diversities of gifts, but the same Spirit. There are differences of ministries, but the same Spirit. There are diversities of activities, but it's the same God who works all in all. And of course, Paul is talking about the body and how it functions, and you have different members of the body. Each member of the body contributes differently, and every part, even the parts of the body that don't seem important, actually, in fact, are important. And so again, the idea is that there are differences between individuals and that collectively we become stronger. The motivational test is centered around Romans chapter 12, and it was, I think, inspired by Christians. I don't know really who or how, but it's become a very popular test. I remember taking it manually 20-something years ago, 30 years ago. And so it was built on this idea, Romans 12, referring to these 7 gifts as motivational gifts. It's a little bit of a stretch from the context. It's not like Paul was teaching this to say, hey, by the way, this is going to make a great personality test, and we're going to construct this so that you can test and find out what your motivational gifts are, and here are the 7 gifts. That is not at all what Paul had in mind, but we have imposed that onto the text. So I just, as a disclaimer, want us to understand it's not like the motivational gift test is right here in Romans 12. But there's an underlying principle that we're trying to extract from it to apply. Okay. So when you look at these, well, let's read it first. Having then gifts differing according to the grace given to us, let us use them. If prophecy, let us prophesy. In proportion to our faith. Of ministry, let us use it in our ministering. He who teaches, in teaching. He who exhorts in exhortation. He who gives with liberality. He who leads with diligence. He who shows mercy with cheerfulness. So there are the 7 gifts. So what are they? Let's look at it. You guys can, well, they're right there in front of me, but basically a lot of people will say, well, that's 7 gifts. That's like a menorah, right? It's actually not a menorah, but I'm going to draw a menorah anyway. So a lot of people will kind of impose and extract and create kind of a new dogma based on our ideas, but I'm not doing that. I'm just telling you as a disclaimer, it's not a menorah, but it kind of works. Okay, so any more than the motivational gifts are in the Bible. Okay, so what are the gifts? If we go through the structure of the text, the first gift, prophecy. So prophecy, and the next gift, say it, ministry, or it may have shown in your test is serving. And then the next is teaching. And then in the center, exhortation. And then giving, leading, or sometimes called administration, and then finally mercy. So when you took that test, it probably rated you in some way with each of these, and I think it uses different words. What's it called, prophecy in the test? Perceiver, okay. So they use a little different words, the same idea. Okay, so what I want you to kind of get, right, prophecy is perceiver, ministry is serving, teaching is the teacher, exhortation, the encourager, giving, the giver, leadership, the ruler. Some of you, I think that may be what shows up on the test. Mercy, or showing mercy. So with this, it's really kind of cool, and I do the whole menorah thing because in ancient literature, the way that they structured their thoughts is very different to the way we structure our thoughts. So the entire Bible is structured in what they call chiasms, chiasmic structures. And so where we organize our thoughts, we say introduction, the body, which is ABC, the 3 sets of the body, and then conclusion. That's how we organize naturally, without even thinking unconsciously. We organize our thoughts that way, but that's not how they did it in ancient times, Old Testament and New Testament. In fact, the book of John has probably the most complex chiasms structured throughout the book. Long chiasms, and then chiasms within chiasms. Here, let me show you kind of how it works. So you have, we'll call this A, B, C, D. And then here will be C prime, B prime, A prime. Okay? So what it is like a chevron. It's like, it's building up through a process of thought up to a central point being in the middle. And then it works away from that central point. So what happens is A mirrors A prime intentionally. B mirrors B prime intentionally, and each one is kind of a mirror image. Does that make sense? So it's important for understanding how these all work together. It may sound maybe a little tedious, but I've heard pastors actually teach this and change it around because they don't like the order. And the reason they're doing it is they don't understand the structure. They don't understand how intentional and inspired the structure is, but they don't like the order, so they move it around when they teach it. Okay, so there's no need to do that once you understand it. Really is a dynamic concept. So if you think of prophecy, it's not necessarily talking about the charismatic movement prophecy like we think of it as a gift of the Spirit. It's talking about where people are anointed and motivated but tend to be prophetic in the Old Testament sense, classic sense of a prophet, someone who's very direct, and there's someone who sees ahead and warns and kind of corrects along the path. They're a little rough on the edges, but they're very needed, right? Well, the opposite of the prophecy is mercy. So the person that is highly prophetic has a hard time understanding the mercy-motivated person. And the person that's mercy-motivated has a really hard time with the prophetic person. So it's intentional that they're a mirror image of each other, meaning that when Paul writes this, he's trying to suggest that these two are meant to complement each other, not work against each other. The person that's prophetic here can learn from the mercy-motivated person. The person mercy-motivated can learn from the prophetic person. When I took this test many years ago, it was a manual version of it. When I took this test, I was like, I was very heavy on this. It wasn't my number one, but I was 0 on this. Now, I think if I took it now, I would have more mercy, naturally, empathetic, But and so here you see it again with serving. What is it across from? Ruling. So they're kind of intuitively or logically think of them as kind of opposite. Well, serving is kind of humble, and I'm going to serve you, and I want to work with you. And a ruler is someone who's bossing people around and ordering things. But what he's saying is that they're both the same side. They're both two sides of the same coin. They're meant to complement each other and work all together. So that's the idea. And the central point in all of it is what? Exhortation. And so what does that mean? It means that we're to be encouraged. We're to be fortified. We're to be inspired. We have to keep moving forward. So I always like to tell this story, and I'm going to kind of wing it, but basically you have in the church, you can have a special event. And everybody's been planning it. Project managers have been planning it. They've been working behind the scenes, and it's maybe a 10-year commemoration of the church's birth. And they're going to plant a special tree in the property. And so they wheel it in, and it's during the Sunday service, and everybody's excited because it symbolizes a new season in the church. And so they bring out the pot and the beautiful tree that's coming down the aisle. And as it's coming, one of the wheels falls off the cart, and it falls over, and somebody reaches to catch it, and it falls over, and the pot breaks all over the ground, and there's dirt and soil, and it's in the middle of the service, and it's so disheartening, and it's like, now what do we do? And so this is where all the gifts kick in. So the prophet says, I tried to tell you guys, you wouldn't listen, but I was going to tell you guys that cart was a piece of junk. And I had a chart I found, but no, you don't want to spend any money on that, so here we are. You guys learn your lesson. The mercy-motivated person, who the guys that are bringing the cart out feel responsible, and they go, hey, it's okay. Listen, it could happen to anybody. And the gift of giving steps up and go, you know what, guys? Nothing to worry about here. I'll pay for everything. I'll take care of it. Here it is right here. Who else wants to contribute? We're going to, this thing costs $500, $800. We're going to all contribute right now, and I'm going to start us off. I'll pay half of it. See, the gift of giving steps up. And then the serving, they say, all this babbling. What is all this babbling? Let's clean up the mess. And they've already got the vacuum, and they've got the dustpan and the brooms, and they're already working, and they're not saying a word. They're just taking care of the problem, and they're probably grumbling a little bit because everybody's making such a big deal and everybody's jabbering on about it. Can't we just clean it up and we can move on with our lives here? Okay. Teaching. The teacher steps up and says, we can all learn from this moment. And I just think that maybe God is trying to tell us something. Maybe there's something we have to learn. He orders our steps, and he knew that wheel was going to fall off of that cart. And so we just have to step back right now and just ask ourselves, what would be a compelling principle that can guide us through this process? And I just thought of a scripture or whatever. Let's see, what do we do? Administration. The administration, the ruler, they are, meanwhile, even though the servants are already really stepping into it, the ruler's going, they need more help. Who else can go help the servants? Somebody now. Let's get this done right now, and we're gonna get this all worked out. Okay, that's the ruler. They tend to start taking charge. But where's the exhorter come in? The exhorter stands and says, ladies and gentlemen, I know that this is a disheartening moment, but I want you to know that whatever obstacles we face in our lives, however challenging or however difficult it might happen to be, we are going to move forward. And we are going to move forward together. And you know what? We're going to put that tree back, and we're going to put it back in a new pot with new soil, and it's going to be sitting out on our property, and the season is still alive with what God is about to do in our church. So that's the exhorter. You see how it all works together? Bottom line, in the end, we need to move forward. The exhorter brings it all together. So that's an illustration to show you how different gifts can work together, and also how they can kind of get on each other's nerves at the same time. So we looked at you probably took the test. Hopefully you took the test of 5 love languages. I think it's wonderful. I felt like it was very informative to Jeanette and I, as all these tests have been. And we discovered that our number 1 love language was different. And so mine's physical touch, and her number 1 is serving. And so if I bite the bullet and I spend a few hours with her in the yard, pulling weeds and stuff, she feels love. I don't feel love at all. I just feel exhausted, and I'm having allergies to the grass and all the other bugs and things that are out there. But it's the way she accepts love. So I loved her. It is a sacrificial thing. And so, but we both have number 2 together, which really works nicely, and that's quality time. It's helpful if you have 1 or 2 on the top together. We really like being together. We really like hanging out. And we don't even have to be talking. We just hang out. We're near each other. We like being together. Quality time. The challenge is that in those 5 gifts, that an individual, we tend to want to express love to people in our language. So if somebody has gift of giving gifts to people, that's not my love language, but people will give me gifts. And it doesn't mean I don't appreciate what they've done, but it doesn't fill my love cup. Unless it's a rock from an exotic location with a fossil in it, or if it's cash. If it's cash, that is one of the greatest gifts you can possibly give. The gift that keeps on giving. But generally, I'll have people bring me gifts. I had somebody bring me once a porcelain Jesus in the boat, and this gaudy porcelain awful thing, but I couldn't throw it away because somebody gave me this gift. So it sat in my office at home for a few years. And when that person moved out of my life and so forth, I thought, okay, I'm free. I can go ahead and throw it away. There's no chance they'll ever know. And I was set free. But it was just, they thought it was this amazing gift that they could give me and that I would appreciate. Okay, so just learn from this and I have every married couple that I counsel before they get married, premarital counseling, I will have them go through these tests, this test in particular, because they often have different love languages, and it helps them begin to understand each other and how to minister to each other, how to serve each other. So you did the animals test. We handed it out to most of you early. So what did you get? How many? Okay, so the letters, you figured it out. The G is goat, right? Yeah, I know, you figured it out. It means golden retriever. And the L is lion. And the O is otter. Okay, so those are the four, and then beaver. So how many beavers are there here? Can I see your hands? Are beavers? Amanda's a beaver. Okay, we got beavers. Okay. How many here got lion? Couple lions. Oh, Chris. Okay, Dara's a lion. Daniel, you're a lion? It's however many checks you got in one column. Which column got the most checks? What? He's a lion? How do y'all get along at home? 2 lions. All right. And again, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but just to give you the essence of it, I think it's a really, as simple as this test is, it's also, if you could go to the next screen, there is another test that uses fancy words. I far prefer the animals because everybody understands the animals. You want to be phlegmatic or melancholy or choleric or sanguine. What do those even mean? Nobody uses those words in normal language. So we're going with otter, lion, beaver, and golden retriever. Okay? But those are the equivalents. And then the bottom line is the equivalents of the temperaments in the Myers-Briggs, approximately. So I found it very helpful because in fact, I remember years ago, I had a young lady I was talking to, and this was like over 10 years ago, and we were just chatting, and I'd had them go through the seminar, and we had a number of areas of need in our ministry. And as we were talking, I said, so what did you test? She said, I tested lion. I said, you tested lion? Then what are you doing? Why don't I put you in charge of something? She says, okay. And I put her in charge of administration or some project management or something, whatever it was, where her lion could flourish. And she really did well. So that was an example that I hadn't even considered her in that role, except that she told me I tested a strong lion. Now, in my case, when I tested many years ago, I tested lion and otter tied. It's very problematic because it means that I'm a conflicted individual often. All right, so testing lion and otter. So this is why when I go on a Big Bend trip or something, I use Amanda. I lean on her really heavy. I said, Amanda, I need an enforcer. You got to make sure we stay on this, watch our time, make sure this happens and that happens when it needs to, and make sure that the camp is clean. And whatever it is, she administrates and runs it, and she's really comfortable with the whole role. Amanda, did you test lion? Beaver, you're beaver. But nonetheless, I like the fact that there was somebody else enforcing, taking care of some of it so I could have more fun. I don't want to just be the lion all the time. I want to play. And it's really difficult sometimes when you have to be in charge and you have to be responsible. You have to be the adult in the room. But there's a side of you that wants to play hard, okay? So that's the idea. So there were 3 or 4 lions I saw. So the challenge is there's a lot of data on this. So I'm not going to go through all of these. I could take the next 20 minutes. But for instance, a lion, their strengths are problem solver. But each strength has a corresponding weakness. So the weakness may be they become too busy or too intense or unthoughtful of others' wishes or stubborn, whereas on the positive side, instead of stubborn, they're strong-willed, they're determined, they push through, they're leaders. And so you have to realize with many things, characteristics that we have, there's always a flip side of a weakness or a prone in an area that we need to have strengthened. And so each of these has those corresponding characteristics. So the golden retriever, you can probably guess. Let's look at that. How many golden retrievers were there? Oh my goodness, lots of them. Y'all are so friendly and fun and want to get along with everybody. Oh, I don't want to step on anybody. I don't want to step on anybody's toes. Let's see, golden retriever. Okay, so strengths have sensitive feelings, so that's also a weakness. You see? easily hurt. I'm like, by the lions. All right, so the strength of golden retrievers, what do you think of? Loyal, calm, even keel, non-demanding, patient. On the other side, they have to be careful not to be a pushover, taken advantage of. So anyway, there's lots of them. Beaver, same thing. They can be a perfectionist. That can be a strength, but it can also be a weakness, see? They can become too controlling. That's where Amanda helps on a Big Bend trip. She wants to make sure it all runs right. She'll tell me, Pastor Glenn, we're out of time. We've got to move forward now. Okay, so, right, I go, I know. Yes, Mom. Okay. All right, so the beaver wants to be accurate. They want to be precise. But on the other side, they could be overly critical, too strict. Okay, so I just gave you the approximate equivalents of these tests. The Enneagram is really a matter of how nerdy are you. If you really want to be nerdy, I'm not going to teach the Enneagram. If you want to learn about it, Amanda knows all about it. Go to the next screen, Amanda. So this screen will tell you how the Enneagram merges with the Myers-Briggs. And if you want to spend your afternoon working on that, feel free. The NTs here will probably want to do that. If you know you're an NT, we'll find out. Okay, there's a lot of data on that screen. So I want to introduce you to the Myers-Briggs. I don't have any special certification to administer the Myers-Briggs. We take the tests, the free tests that we've researched and felt like it was a good one. But a lot of times understanding yourself first. Do I have a group picture? No. I had that in the introduction. I had a couple of group pictures there. But a lot of times if you see a group picture, the first thing, look at that, she's good. The first thing you want to do in a group picture is who do you look for first? Everybody's looking at Randy. Randy really stands out in that picture because he is speaking on Sunday morning and he is very expressive and very animated and everybody's just stunned. You notice they're all just like, their mouths are open, there are flies flying in, and they're just like, what are you saying, Randy? What does that mean? Anyway, Randy, you're turning red. Okay. I couldn't resist. I got a new iPhone 13 that takes pictures indoors really well. I had to test it out. So anyway, but we tend to look for ourselves in a group picture. And that's natural because that's the first thing we're trying to do is understand ourselves. If we can understand ourselves a little better, it can then from there help us understand other people that we're working with. All right, so Myers-Briggs is also called the MBTI, 16 personality types. The eggheads and the nerds have been analyzing data on this thing for 60 years. So it's used by institutions, it's used by the military, it's been used for a long time, it's very reputable, and partly it's because there's a lot of data collected around this test. It's not foolproof, obviously, but it gives us some idea. So the 8 letters that make up 16 personality types are as follows: ENFP, ISTJ. That's 8 letters. So when you look at these 8 letters in various combinations of 4, they make up 16 personality types. Some of you are very familiar with this, I'm sure, but others aren't. So I have to kind of start with the building blocks. So when you look at the temperaments and how they're broken out, there are 4 primary modes of operation. So, for instance, the E and the I is the first column, E over I. Can you go back one more time to the 8 letters? So you have E and I and an S, and each one is counter to the other. The S, the T and the F, you probably figured that one out. T is thinking, F is feeler. And then P and J. The P and J are the one that it doesn't really make a lot of sense, but we just have to go with it. The P means literally perceiving. But what it really means is that a person who we call a P, or refer to, well, I'm a P in my test, it means that you prefer, within your day, you prefer an open-ended, flexible approach to the way you run your day. The J prefers a lot of closure in their day. And they have a place for everything. If they have their lipstick or their clothes, they're all organized in the closet. The P will tend to just have it all over the place. And if you change it, they can't find anything. So when you look at these EINSFT, so go ahead and go to the next screen. So the first one, the ENIS, extrovert, introvert, it's not about how much you talk, because introverts can talk a lot in the right circumstance. It might not be natural for them, as natural as it may be for an extrovert, but that's not how you decide if you are an extrovert or introvert. You decide based on how you get energy. How do you recharge your battery? You know, I just put a post up about lithium batteries and how they have to be discarded and what it takes. So you have to recharge those batteries. Well, you have a battery, an emotional, mental battery that has to be recharged. So if you go on a Big Bend trip and you're with our young adults and you're stuck with them for 4 days, the introvert gets done with that trip and they need 2 weeks to recover in isolation in the fetal position sucking their thumb. Peyton's like, wow, man. Okay, so, but the extrovert's kind of like, the trip is over, but I feel kind of an emptiness. I feel like I could have gone another 2 or 3 days. I mean, I miss everybody, and why did we leave so quickly, right? That's the difference between the E and the I. So it measures, the first one measures our flow of energy. How are we recharged? The second thing is how we take in information. That's the N stands for intuitive, S sensing. S sensing, if you think of your senses, your 5 senses. So your hearing, your eyesight, your feeling, touch, all these things are, you get your data, kind of a down-to-earth, no-nonsense sense of getting data. You're an S. Okay? We're thankful there are S's in the world. The intuitives, however, they get information from sources that we have yet to be determined. So there is information apparently floating in the air, and the intuitive is able to like grab it and go, oh yeah, that's good. Oh, that's true. That's right. And they just grab information. I don't understand it because I'm not an intuitive. Okay? So, but all of us have all of these in us to some degree. You understand? I can be an intuitive when my back's against the wall. If I have to be. I can be on rare occasions. The Holy Spirit makes me more intuitive, but that's different. That's the gifts of the Spirit. The third thing is, how do we prefer to make decisions? That's the feeling and thinking. So a thinker prefers to make decisions based on the data. The feeler makes decisions based out of more empathy. Now remember, every feeler is a thinker. Every thinker is a feeler. You sit there and go, well, I'm a T, so it doesn't mean that you're Spock from Star Trek. I'm a thinker, I'm like Spock. No, it doesn't mean that at all. You notice there's a few episodes where Spock loses all his inhibitions and he's dangling from trees and gets emotional. See, he even has deep inside an emotional side, a feeling side. So we all have it. We all have each of these in us. What it's measuring is what your preference is. Everything else equal. What is your preference? What do you want? When everything else, you prefer to be on the thinking side or feeling side. So it's how you prefer to make decisions. And then finally, P and J, which I explained a moment ago. J wants closure in their day-to-day. It's not talking about long-term planning. Because a P can be a great project manager and can be very effective in long-term planning. Patton was an ESTP, General Patton. He was good at planning and organizing, very ambitious risk taker, but he also ran out of fuel with his tank column going after the Germans. He said, we cannot miss this opportunity. They've got to catch up. And so that was his P side, willing to take a risk, but he also ran out of gas. For the Third Army. Third Army ran out of gas charging into Germany. Okay, so with each of these categories, we prefer to be either extrovert, introverted, and so forth. So, for example, if we look at, if we line up ESTJs, they're not the same people. In other words, if we had 4 ESTJs in the room today and we lined you all up, it's not like you're all the same. And there's a lot of reasons that you're not. there's variations within each type. For instance, one may be 55% extroverted, the other may be 85% extroverted. And once you change those percentages, it changes the person and who they are. There's also a lot of things that these tests don't measure. The Myers-Briggs does not measure character. So a lot of people will go, well, that person's late all the time to church. That must be they're a P. Oh, it has nothing to do with P. It has to do with character. You follow? It really and truly is not measurable in a test why people are late all the time. It is not about their personality. And because I'm a P and I'm not late all the time. And if I am, I try to communicate with somebody. I have an appointment. I'm running 5 minutes late. I'll text them. I'm running a little bit late. So it's about character. So they don't measure your IQ. They don't measure like how intelligent you are or your integrity, character, or your knowledge. The percentages are all different. So you have to realize that there's no carbon copy. Human beings are very complex people. Women, interesting that as a general percentage, women are 60% feelers and men are 60% thinkers. So, if you go, and there's exceptions to all these things, you understand. I mean, it's not like these are just percentages, general percentages. But because sometimes if you have a woman, and not so much nowadays, but maybe 20, 30 years ago, it'd be more of a big deal. But if you have a female that's a very strong thinker, it's the way they function, the way they think, and the way they can be misunderstood in the workplace as being maybe too assertive, or they're know-it-alls, or they're this or that. And so they can sometimes have to work through that. It's unfortunate, but sometimes that can be the case. It's interesting if you go, when Amanda took computer science, Amanda's a thinker. She's a ISTP. So you took computer science, Amanda. It was all men except you, right? Pretty much. So if you go to engineering, you'll see the same thing. You'll see the classes are dominated by men. And I don't know if it has to do with this or not, or if there's a preference. I know that I worked in orthopedics for many years. 99% of the orthopedic surgeons were men. And so all of the reps were also men, because we took them on trips, we did all this stuff. But if you went to and we were self-employed, but if you went to some of the other specialties within orthopedics, like endosurgery or some of those things, and the Ethicon reps, you'll see mostly women. And I've been in some other facets of medical devices and medical sales where it'd be almost half and half, men and women, but the women were almost always thinkers. I know because I tested them. I did a presentation for my own region years ago, and there were CEOs, CFOs. There were with the company I was with at the time. They knew I did these presentations, so they wanted me to do it, and they were all required to take the tests. And so what I found out was that the room was full, and it was half men and half women. But what I found was that they were all thinkers, almost without exception. All of them were thinkers. These were high-performing reps in a surgical environment where they had to dialogue with surgeons all the time and make a case and understand the technical part and all that. But it's not like they wouldn't have hired feelers, but it's the thinkers who felt drawn to that type of job for whatever reason. I just noticed that. I also noticed that a lot of the same people don't go to church. We'll talk about that too later. Okay, so let's look at the 4 temperaments. So when you look at the 16 combinations of letters, when you break them out, you have what are referred to as 4 temperaments. So, for instance, I'm an ESTP. So based on being an ESTP, which temperament would I be? SP. Okay, I'll have to speak up. Yeah. Okay. Anybody here an SJ? What are your letters, Logan? ESFJ. So Logan is an SJ. That's his temperament. The temperaments always, without exception, they're all seeking the same thing. So all SJs are security seeking. All SPs are sensation seeking. That means we're very shallow people. Randy, you're an SP. Amanda, you're an SP. Cece's an SP. Who else? You're an SP? Okay. So you know what the SPs, I'm always thankful that we have plenty of SPs in our church, because I'm concerned because SPs typically don't like to go to church because it's too boring. So that's why it works if you can be in a Pentecostal meeting occasionally and the SPs are a little bit more, they kind of wake up like, oh, we don't know what's going to happen next. This is cool. All right. So the SP temperament are action seeking, adventure. They really thrive on action and adventure. So the SJ, security seeking. NF, identity seeking. Any NFs here? Okay, a number of you are NFs. So NFs are such likable people. There probably a lot of them are golden retrievers too, but they usually dominate this class because they're identity seeking. What are they doing? They're trying to figure themselves out, and it's a lifetime endeavor. Literally, their entire life centers around this need to figure themselves out, and it's a very deep quest that they have. Was the SP never ceases wanting another adventure, and the SJ never ceases their entire life of seeking security. So, and then the NT. Do we have any NTs? Oh, really? I don't know. That many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 NTs? That's very unusual. We might want to look at that because NT is the rarest of all temperaments. It's the intuitive thinker. And they are knowledge seeking. That means they would probably nothing they would like to do more than get another degree and make really good grades without even trying. It's not fair. They tend to have really high IQs, but part of it is, and they also end up being lawyers, CEOs, corporate executives, and top high-performing engineers and technical people, doctors, lawyers. These people tend to be NTs. Not always. There's always exceptions, but many of them, and the doctors, surgeons I used to work for, almost all of them were NTs. And so, but that's the rarest of the percent. So usually when I do this class, we have 1, maybe 2. And if we have 4, then I question whether they're all really NTs. And the reason, and we can look at that and you'll begin to understand, but sometimes if you take that test and you answer too much in the neutral, then you end up with an in-between. You don't have a good defined 4 letters. You end up with something kind of a mishmash. And so it tries to decide you're 51%, 49%, T or E, and you're kind of in the middle. So retake the test and don't answer everything neutral. And then kind of force yourself. Do not answer in a neutral and see if you get a more defined result. So oftentimes that's what happens, because I've seen many people that felt like they're NTs and they just clearly were not. So maybe look at that. And the only reason I say that is 5 is highly unusual in one class. So it would make me want to rethink that and maybe look at some of those results. Jeanette insists, and here she is. Logan, she's probably been to more of these than you. He's been to 5 classes, honey. You've been to more than that. You should get another degree. So she insists that there's another temperament, a 5th temperament. And she calls it the ST temperament. She says, you STs, you're all the same. Or she says, yeah, that's that old ST thing, or whatever. And she kind of pigeonholes because a number of us in the family are STs. And so me and Alicia and Josh were the STs. ST, she calls it. So anyway, I don't know if it's true or not, but there's just 4 in the Myers-Briggs, 4 temperaments. But it kind of does work a little bit. So with that, do you have any, that's an introduction to Myers-Briggs. We're going to go deeper next week, and we're going to look at practical applications. And then I'm going to give you some really fun exercises to do. Actually, it's more people than I thought would be here. I always question every year I do this class. I think, gee, it's been a year. a lot of them have been to it before. We probably have 5 people, and every time there's 15 or 20 people every single year. And I'm like, I'll just keep doing it every year then. But I think maybe I should do it every 2 years, do it every 3 years. Now, but every year seems to be working. So thank you for coming out. It's a whole lot more fun when there's people here. So we can have a conversation. We have a little time. Do you have any questions about what you've heard so far? Or comments? Comments or questions are fine.
I want to know Miss Jeanette's reasoning for ST.
You want to know what?
Her reasoning for ST.
It's an intuitive reason.
I have collected a lot of data, and what STs do, since they always know better, and they have the facts, and they've thought it through, and they will tell you how it is, and they cannot be budged unless you have 10 pages of facts. And that doesn't work for an NF. You can see it in children. I have ST grandchildren, and they will catch me every time I make a little mistake.
Really? Well, we also have children who are NTs, intuitive thinkers. So Nathan's NT. Who else is an NT? Jay is an ESTJ, another ST. Emily's an ESFP. So like y'all want to know all these. But so we have kind of a mix in our family. We suspect that all the Holland children, not our children, the Nathan Holland children, we suspect they'll all be NTs. So they're already problematic. Okay. You have a comment, Amanda? Anybody else? Comments, questions? He what?
He's actually an SJ, not an NT.
SJ. Yeah, I can see that.
I was just going to say that I took this for like a career aptitude thing in high school, and I tested always for like years and years and years as an INTJ. And I think if you're not in the right headspace, you're going to have wrong answers or like wrong things, because now I'm in like all of my letters flipped. So
How old were you?
I was probably like 15, 16.
Oh, yeah. And what are they now?
ESTP.
ESTP, that sounds right for you. Okay, so what happens is a teenager's in flux. They change a lot. I mean, you add 5, 6, 7, 8 years to a 15-year-old, they're a different person. All the neurons get truncated, they have to relearn everything, and all of a sudden they come out the other side and go, who are you, where'd you come from? And that's teenager. I know Nathan had that happen too. He was not an NT for his entire teenage years, and then one day as an adult he took the test, and he's an aerospace engineer. He has a master's degree. He's all these things. Is clearly an NT. And you could kind of see it when he was a kid, because he'd draw these schematics in the bedroom. In his room, he had these diagrams, and they were microscopic, tiny, but intricate, long. They looked like circuit boards. He would draw all these plans, and then he had a compulsion to want to take things apart all the time. We're going to throw away a toaster. Let me have it. We're going to throw away an iron. Let me have it. He wants to take them apart. So it makes sense he became an engineer. Yeah.
Can you explain a little bit on security seeking, please?
Security thing. I'm actually going to spend a little bit more time on that next week, but the SJs, they are the adults in the world. They are the ones that uphold the institutions. They're the ones that'll stick with you in your church when everybody else is, all over the map. SJ, just hold the line. They are the adults. They are what make the world go around. They are the beavers, the ones who make it all hold together when the rest of us are confused.
That's why I play drums, because it holds everybody together.
That's why you play drums, because you're an SJ. I think when you have a marriage and you have an SJ and you have an NF, it's very important that they work together to understand each other because they are really, really different. The intuitive feeler and NF, identity seeking, these are delightful people, but oftentimes they can have trouble sticking with something for a long period of time, and so they become distracted easily, especially ENFP. They would be having a conversation with you, and in the middle of the first 2 or 3 sentences, go, "Oh, it's a bird." I mean, they have to really work hard to focus and to stay on track, and they get bored very quickly. They can start a college degree program and then change it 3 or 4 times because this is not me, and so forth. All right.
Where did you fall on the graph again?
What?
Where did you fall on the graph again?
On this graph?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't say. Ooh.
Will you enlighten us?
I was exhortation and teaching as 1 and 2. And that's why I do the exhortation part of the little skit I do so naturally, because I kind of I get it. Yeah, I got it. We can do this. So if we're going to do the South Rim this year in January, we can do this. We can do this. Anybody else? Great comments, great questions. Yes, Kaya? Oh, it's a nothing? So we'll do a survey next week. Hopefully you all will come back next week because I want to do a survey of participants. But just real quick, tell me how many of you are NFs? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, how many of you are SJs? Thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for caring. Thank you for upholding the institutions of America. How many of you were there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, how many, what did I leave out? NTs, we had 5 NTs. NT, 1, 2, 3, 4 NTs. SPs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 SPs. Okay. Which one do you think makes up most of the population? Just all of America. Who do you think? You think most of us are SPs? Is everybody agrees that you think SPs make up the whole of the population? I think I have those percentages in the next screen. It's in part 2, but just throw that up real quick. There you go. So you're close. SPs are 40% of the population. SJs, however, make up the majority at 45%. And NTs are only 6%. NFs are only 9%. The rarest of all personalities is the INFJ. Jeanette's an INFJ. Do we have any others here? Oh, right. Margaret's an INFJ. What? You're both INFJs? Oh. Do y'all have extrasensory perception? So the INFJs, we have 4 in the room? Crystal's an ESTP. We have a special club for us ESTPs. Okay, so INFJs, there were 4 of you? It's the rarest. See, there really should just be 1. There can only be 1. Like the Highlander, there can only be 1 among the immortals. Okay, so here's the deal, you INFJs. I should read you. Go to personalitypage.com and read about yourself. I'll never forget it. One day I read to Jeanette. I was reading her personality from that site, and she started crying. And the reason is because she felt understood. And INFJs classically feel nobody gets them. Do y'all feel that way? And they're also the most likely of all the group. The INFJs are the ones that tend to kind of a Lord of the Rings elfin gift of tapping into the cosmos, like They get vibes in a way that others don't get. They get information on a whole new plane. So that's why they were thought of as being the most likely to have ESP. ESP, extrasensory perception, which we don't believe in that sense, like it may be related. But the fact is that they tend to be very highly intuitive individuals. And you have to realize that intuition is very powerful and it can be very helpful at times, but it also can be wrong. And even though it feels so right, like you have the information, you know this, but it may not be, and that's where being married to an SJ or an SP or a T can kind of help temper that a little bit. But you're married to each other. Who tempers you? See, you have an SJ or SP, another T in the mix, and they tend to keep your feet on the ground. No, honey, I don't think that's the way it is. Here's the facts. I don't care what your facts are. I know this. All right. Well, we'll call it a night. Good night. It's been a good night. Appreciate so many of you coming out. And please come back for part 2. And I think it'll be worth your while. We're going to have some fun exercises, some videos and things.